So these children, to stop them having the drugs in the clinic is very easy. But what we have to deal with is the trauma. They have undergone huge physical trauma, emotional trauma, sexual abuse. I mean, it's horrible. When you hear their stories, you will literally cry. And I still cry. If I tell you a story about them, it will bring tears to my eyes. It does. After having told that story, I don't know how many times. It still does. To give you a typical example, not a typical example, a fairly common type of example. We picked up a child when the child was about 9.5. We motivated the child to come to us. The child came to us. And his life story was that when he was 5.5, his parents died. And he was looked after by his older brother. His older brother was an addict, and to feed his own addiction, the older brother would sell this 5.5-year-old for sex. Can you imagine that? A 5.5-year-old being sold for sex to feed his brother's addiction. Eventually, that boy, 5.5, he ran off from his house, from the brother when he was about 7, and started living on the streets. And of course, by that time, he was an addict himself. If you think about it, I know for sure that if I was abused like that, commit suicide is something different, but I would certainly be taking drugs to drown all those sorrows inside. It's horrific. When we see them on the streets, we say, go, dirty. We don't understand what they've been through. And many of them been through stories like that. Maybe they weren't sold for sex at 5.5, but they were certainly abused, maybe at 5.5, maybe at 6.5, maybe at 7.5, maybe at 8.5, whatever. They've gone through huge traumas. So what we are doing is to deal with that trauma. And that's not easy at all. It's not easy to deal. It takes time. It takes time and a lot of treatment. Started this because, and I say I, because at that time it was just me. Later on we had a good board and a board of trustees, so now it's all we. At that time, because I felt the need, I had friends who were affected by addiction. I had family which were affected by addiction. But there was nothing here. There was no decent treatment centers here. When we send our people to the streets, and we would be sending counselors who are either recovering addicts, or some of them are children who've been through our system and they've been in recovery for 2 or 3 years. So they can go out on the streets and tell the children, hey, मैं भी तुम्हारे जैसा ही था, मैं भी इधर ही खड़ा होता था, वो सड़क पे मैं खड़ा होता था, मैं वहाँ पे खड़ा होता था, मैं भी पीता था, अब मुझे देखो. So they motivate the children to come. When they've been living on the streets, you can imagine that how much violence there is on the streets, how violent the children have to be to survive. There would not be a child who comes to us who would not have knifed somebody or the other. Even if he's a 7-year-old, he would have knifed somebody, because that's the way they live. They live with galis, they live with knifing, they live with fighting, they live with drugs. And on the streets, they are actually many of them, when they come to us, they're dehumanized, totally dehumanized. We've had children who come for 3 months, they don't talk. All they can do is to scratch and bite. That the first thing we do is to say, okay, your name? He says, Yusuf. We said, okay, from today you will be Yusuf Bhai. You will call me Rehman Bhai. I will call you Aap, and you will call me Aap. That's the ground rule, straight away. So he knows that he is going to be respected. He's never had respect in his life. He's never had respect or love in his life. If you look at any of these children on the streets next time, when you see them, have a look at their arms. See how many cuts you can see there. Look at them. You'll see lots of cuts. They do self-harming. They self-harm. And why do they self-harm? Do you know? It's interesting. They self-harm because they can't cry. This is their tears. This is the way to cut out the pain. They prefer this pain for the pain inside. So, what do you do if at the center a child starts to cut himself? You understand? You have to be trained how to deal with that. Not only the counselors, but not only the medical staff, it's just the whole staff. They have to all be trained for all these kind of things. How would you separate the children? What is an appropriate way to reprimand? I mean, until we knew better, and you know that at home as well, lots of people are sent off to the corner. Go and stand in the corner. What? Do you know how much shame that is to the child? Shaming the child. He's had enough shame the whole of his life. And if you shame him further, you know what I mean? So they're different. Everybody has to be taught appropriate manners of punishment, appropriate manners of talking to the children, asking permission. When I go there, and I go there every Sunday to see the children, sometimes the child is just sitting there. He doesn't want to talk, he doesn't want to do anything, so I go to him. And of course, I want to reach out to him. There's this little cute little thing who's just, they're all cute, okay? I'm not talking about beauty in that sense, I'm talking about beauty inside. I'd like to just bring that physical, but before I do that, I ask him, is it okay if I touch you? And sometimes they say no, because they're not ready for it. We have to understand that. They're not ready to be touched even by me. Usually, 98% they'll say, 99% they'll say yes. I would hold them and start some sort of conversation, get them back into it. But ask. How many of us would ask? You know what I mean? Even our children at home, when the children are really, for lack of a better word, pissed off, they don't want to be touched. They want their space for a short while, yes. So, you know what I mean? So these are things that we have to teach the staff. There's a lot of training that is required. It's not easy.